Afternoon. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled HLC meeting of January 6th of 2010 to order. First off, I'd like to welcome back Louise Boucher for another 4 years on the Historic Landmarks Commission, and also welcome back Phil Suding as our newly appointed commissioner. Yeah. First order of business is the election of officers. So the floor is now open for the office of chair.
I'll second that motion. Like it or not. Is there all?
Nominations are now closed for the office of chair, and that's it. So all those in favor of Suzette Naylor as chair, say aye. Opposed? Okay, congratulations. And then we're going to do the same thing for vice chair. The nominations are now open for the role of vice chair, office of vice chair.
Second.
Okay, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Don Sharp? Don Sharp is now the vice chair for 2010. And so we don't have to get up and move places or anything. It's the same. Okay. And so now you can go ahead and proceed with the meeting.
Go ahead, and I like the unanimity that we're showing here as a pre-stage for the next year. The next item of business will be the appointments to subcommittees. And
I like where I am.
I will become an alternate for consent.
oh, great. So, how would we like to do this? Shall we just go down, or how would you like to do this, Susan, for your best
You can-
recording interest?
You all have this form, I believe.
Yes.
So
I've already filled it out.
you've already filled it out. Excuse me? I think last year, and what we typically do is just go down the list
Yes.
and say who is going to
Yes.
be the primary and who's going to be the alternate.
Yes.
So let's just start off with consent then.
Okay, I'll be an alternate on landscape for consent.
And who?
Continue to do consent.
And okay, Dawn. Okay, and then sign committee liaison. Louise.
Meet at 8:30 in the morning.
Oh. And then did we? I don't have last year's. Did we have an
Peugeot
alternate?
is alternate on that one. Do you continue? All right.
Thank you.
Street tree.
I would like to be on that.
I would like to be an alternate to Adams.
Yay. Great. Visual art. I will continue to do that. And this is going to be quick.
And who's the alternate?
Drury. West Beach Art Program. I think that's done.
Done.
Yeah, that's done. All right. Conservation element.
I'm on that. I want to be on that.
I think I want to be on that. And Mr. Peugeot. Oh, this is going.
Marie Naylor and
Peugeot.
Peugeot.
Design Awards. Adams, Boucher, and Peugeot.
Yeah, I'll continue.
Yeah?
I like it, yeah.
Yeah? Boucher?
We haven't worked that much last year.
No,
Stay on it. Ms. Boucher?
down here.
Yes. Okay. Designations, Boucher, Murray, and Sharp. Stay on?
Yes.
Okay. Boy, this is quick. The guidelines, I think we are done. Yay! Congratulations to us. Events, Boucher and Drury.
Yay.
Party people. Okay. 5-year HLC goals, Murray, Naylor, and Peugeot.
Yes, me.
I would like to stay on. Ms. Murray would like to stay on.
I would like.
Yes.
And Suding would like to come on.
oh, in place of.
Well,
Do
can we have four?
or if we can only have 3, then for continuity's sake, I'll step down.
5-year goals. It's
Murray, Naylor, and Peugeot.
And Phil. So add Phil. We only want 3.
Okay. then I'll
Okay.
step down.
Okay.
So, all right. Historic surveys, Boucher, Murray, and Sharp.
Yes, I mean,
Okay, stay on. State of the Art Gallery, Boucher, appointed, and Drury, alternate. Sure.
And then we actually are going to need Brinkerhoff guidelines subcommittee because we're gearing up for redoing that
Ooh.
document.
I gotta do that.
Yes.
Is that an ad hoc or is that a subcommittee?
It is a subcommittee.
Lily?
I will go on that one if I may.
So Naylor,
Murray.
Murray,
Suiting.
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 Okay.
Great.
Then on the ad hoc, the airport, are we pretty much...
We're done, but
Yeah.
things
May
may
come up.
Okay.
they may come up.
So
We're-
Adams, Murray, and Peugeot shall stay on for those things that might come up?
Yeah, unless Phil wants to take my spot on that.
For airport?
Yeah.
I think for continuity's sake, it might be better
Okay,
to just finish.
that's
Okay.
fine. There's not much going on
Yeah.
now.
El Encanto Hotel, Drury, Naylor, and Schallenberger. Stay on?
If neither of those, I will step in. You're okay? Okay, no problem.
Stay, okay. Entrada de Santa Barbara, Adams, Peugeot, and Sharp. I'm
Yep.
assuming that will stay, yes. Lower Mission Creek Design, Adams and Murray.
I want to step down from that if someone could take.
I will take your place.
Yes, okay. Adams and Suiting. Plaza de la Guerra, Peugeot and Sharp.
Is there such a thing? I mean, is there a project still?
Yes.
It's
yes.
actually, I believe, coming back.
It's coming back.
soon.
Coming back maybe in the simple.
And then last one would be the...
Excuse-
Oh,
Ma-
sorry.
Madam Chair, can you click on?
Peugeot Sharp.
Peugeot and Sharp.
So originally it was Curtis Peugeot and Sharp, but he, of course, stepped down.
Right.
So we need
I'll
to,
do it then.
Yes, Suiting then.
The landscape architect.
Yeah,
Yes.
that should be.
Then the Waterfront Hotel at 433 East Cabrillo Boulevard. Adams, Peugeot, Schallenberger, and Sharp. All staying on?
Yeah. Can I ask one question? On the Street Tree Advisory Committee, can I suggest that Phil be an alternate for that?
I think I did.
He is.
Oh, okay.
He is.
Sorry.
Yes, you got backup.
Okay.
We do an alternate architect or the like for consent. We have,
Sharp and
that's a
Suiting.
good point.
Yes.
Phil is alternate for landscaping, so.
I nominate Schallenberger. You suppose?
Alternate for the consent. Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be Sharp and Schallenberger and Suiting.
Schallenberger is an alternate.
Yes. Terrific. Boy.
Do we have any participation with the ordinance committee at all? Do we ever appoint anyone for anything that may come up?
Madam Chair, that historically has not been something we have to liaison, but we should keep you informed on anything that's going forward. If you'd like a report specific to every meeting, we could.
Thank you. Are there any other questions about this process? Good, we're set. The next item, business public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to speak? No, I'm sorry to hear that. The next item is approval of the minutes of December 9th, 2009. May I have a second? Second. And do a discussion?
Suiting abstains.
Yes.
The archaeology report, item 2, as I recall, at the end of that, we were kind of praiseworthy as far as the fairness of the report. That might be requested in the minutes. Did we not?
We don't normally add comments, but we can if you'd like.
Okay. Well, I just thought it was...
Yes, I think actually we were all quite impressed with the thoroughness and
Is that the Firestone Road? Did you say?
yes, yes.
Madam Chair, exact wording would be what Mr. Drury said.
Would Mr. Drury like to?
If you can reiterate? Or?
Yes.
Just that the commission appreciated the work and the thoroughness of the report. The work in the report and the thoroughness of it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Are there any other comments or changes, revisions to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as revised? Opposed?
And I guess
Abstain?
abstain.
And Suiting abstains. You only get that once.
I know.
On the next item is the consent calendar.
Madam Chair, item A, 1935 State Street was final approval as submitted, and item B, 2559 Puesta del Sol Road was final approval as noted on the drawing. And those two items were reviewed by, the first item was reviewed by Commissioner Sharp, the second item was reviewed by Commissioners Sharp and Adams.
I have,
Ratify the consent calendar.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to miss you, Louise. You're just right in there with your motions. I love that.
Why are you going to miss her? She's staying.
I'll be gone.
Oh, yeah.
Announcements, requests by applicants for continuance and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals.
I don't have any further announcements, Madam Chair, but I believe Jaime Limon would like to say something.
Yes.
Madam Chair, Commission, I had earlier passed out a new pamphlet that the city staff participated in preparing directly as a result of residents that came forward to the city, specifically City Council's office and the mayor's office, indicating that they didn't believe there was sufficient information being provided for residents, local residents, to understand when to participate in the review of projects. Now, we have specific information on our agendas that speak to appeal periods and so forth and where plans are available, but we didn't have a central location on our website that talked about the process and where to engage the city staff and the decision makers in that process in the discussion of a project. And we had actually folks that failed to file an appeal because they were confused about when and how to file an appeal. So at the request of the mayor and council members, specifically Councilman Schneider, asked that we work with an intern to develop a brochure to help the public in a more focused manner on how to participate in our review process. And the whole guide behind, or our goal behind this, was to guide them in a simple manner. And that's why we have something that pretty much reflects a simple approach to how folks can participate in decisions. We also prepared a new, I have the site plan, actual location of the website location. It's called Planning Central, so it's Santa Barbara CA.gov Planning Central, where it actually has links to several parts in our city's website, because that's one of the concerns that we also got back, that our website isn't app friendly, that one has to understand how to navigate it to get to the locations where critical information is provided. So we believe that this is an effort that we could guide residents to, that will actually filter the critical information that's necessary for them to understand how our process works, and the key information that's available for them to understand our guidelines and our review process. So we think this is a major improvement, and we hope to have less complaints filed regarding, our process.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Mr. Shooting.
Speaking to that and Mr. Lamone's comments on the website, is a link to that? I got it. Is a link to that on the very first page that you go to, because see the tabs at the top, home, government, residents, business, visitors. That is not very self-explanatory.
Right.
So if you go home, if you go to the home page, which would be SantaBarbaraCA.gov, is there a link to this Planning Central?
I believe there is. However, I know that we have had some issues with respect to the webmaster, the person who puts the web, as far as how many links we can have.
Okay.
We're promoting the actual location. Is it there? No. Yeah. We're promoting the actual location specifically too, and we're going to actually have these available at the counter to direct folks on inquiries. So we're hoping to put some more information out there that will get them directly to type in this link. But I'll inquire as far as how many links we have directly to this portion.
As much information as you can put, I realize you probably printed thousands of these already, but the website is very difficult to navigate.
Right. And just to let you know that one of the changes that we did make with respect to historic preservation is we have actually called it historic preservation. We were getting some complaints about it being labeled, and so we have actually said historic preservation so people can type it in and find it. So it was called Community Heritage, I believe, and now we believe it's consistent with other communities.
Thank you. I think, oh,
May I ask a question?
I think so.
Is it possible?
Yes, you might want to introduce yourself and speak for the public here.
Yes. Thank you, Kellum DeForest. I am wondering if maybe it's not possible, but the computer and the web can do anything. is there a way to have addresses listed? So if neighbors or people see something going on next door or on their street, they can type in the address and find out what's going on.
It's already there. It is already there. It
Yeah.
is in parcel lookup. If you go under residence and then parcel lookup, you can type in the address and you would find out.
Fine, thank you.
No problem.
Kellum, if you go to the planning and zoning counter and ask one of the staff there, they can turn the computer screen around and they can show you exactly how to get to that. Or come in tomorrow and I'll show you.
I think I've managed to do it. I hit and miss, but it's the citizenry that we get calls from the. I get calls from people from the that call the Pearl Chase Society say, "What's going on with X?" Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you. I mean, that's a great step towards transparency and clarity in my mind. The next item will be, unless there are any announcements from the commissioners? None. Subcommittee reports.
Madam Chair, this will probably be the last of the West Beach disbanded subcommittee. Everything's proceeding. The swimmers and divers, the swimmer and diver next to the plunge is in the ground and it's proceeding. It's
Wonderful.
pretty good.
Thank you. No other reports? I'm
15 minutes ahead of schedule.
And we can start on item number 1 because I'm within my rights.
It's set for 2 o'clock. You might want to take a...
All right.
Chemical break?
Shall we take a 5-6 minute break while we wait for them to appear?
Hello.
Will introduce yourselves to the record.
Sure. I'm Dan Weber, architect.
I'm David Landecker, Executive Director of the Environmental Defense Center.
Thank you. Would you like to make your presentation?
We would, and I've got additional copies of plans for anyone else who would like them.
Yes, and can I just
additional copies.
ask staff about this? It says, comments only, very preliminary concept review.
Right, and that is kind of, I didn't know how else to put this on the agenda so that you would know that that's the reason why you're looking at 11 by 17 sheets instead of, 12 by 18 minimum size drawings, because they kind of wanted to get your opinion on this project before proceeding with more detailed drawings. And so this is one of those projects where they come in and for
Take
a
our
certain fee,
temperature?
they get one review and they get comments. They don't get there's no approval,
Okay.
just comments. And then if it looks like it'll fly, they'll come back with a real project.
Okay. Now that we've been primed.
Okay, so the Environmental Defense Center is a local nonprofit environmental law firm who has a property on Garden Street near the corner of Canon Perdido and Garden. Who recognized the need for additional storage space to improve their property in kind of a forgotten corner of the property, and to facilitate their public outreach and education aspects of their organization that happen on their property. So if you look at the site map on the first page, the corner of the property is a legal aid foundation. It's not a part of the project, and we're at the second property back from the corner on Garden Street. Okay, so the site plan, they have 3 buildings on the property. On the corner near the main entrance on Garden Street, where the gate is what they call the annex building, houses their administrative offices. The main building, which houses this historic resource, the Refugio Cordero Adobe, right now it houses their conference room, kitchen, law offices, and reception. This is built in, we think, 1850s or 1860s. It's not exactly clear, and has had many alterations and additions over the years. And then the third building is a storage shed where they have file storage and additional storage for their activities in the corner, which is where we're proposing the work. And you guys can ask me questions, but I'll make this real brief since it's such a small little project. In the top left corner, we see the property from Garden Street, the annex building with the admin offices, the main building, which houses the historic resource, and the tiny shed just kind of peeking its ridge out down behind the wall. Behind this wall is an approximate 3 or 4 foot step down in grade. So the street's higher than the courtyard inside. Okay, here's in the top middle is a photograph of the property viewed from Canon Perdido Street, which is back behind the parking lot. Then the top right, you can see this is the building which houses the historic resource. A well, which is not exact. It wasn't built at the time of the original adobe, but sometime later. And in the immediate foreground, the shed where we're going to be proposing the work. In the very bottom right, you can see a picture of the corner where we're proposing the additional storage space and pergola structure. There's one major tree in that corner which we're proposing to retain.
What type of tree?
I don't know the type of tree. Next page of photographs shows in the top left the subject property and its immediate neighbor, as well as all the neighbors across the street and adjacent to a variety of architectural styles. In the bottom middle, you see the Legal Aid Foundation, which is the corner. Okay, the next page. we've reversed our orientation now, so south is towards the bottom of the page. Garden Street on the right with the sidewalk and parkway, and then, like I mentioned, there's a step down into the courtyard. Immediately to the south is an adjacent building built right on the property line, and the storage shed with the black walls pochade. No alterations to the existing storage shed are proposed. Adjacent to the shed, we've proposed a U-shaped countertop height structure which will house storage for whatever they want to store underneath. And along the northern portion of that, a portion of that will have a trellis over it to accommodate a vine of some kind growing up above. In the interior, flagstone patio, and we're going to accommodate site drainage, which is currently a problem in that corner of the property. Here we're showing the north elevation. The existing shed has a red board and bat siding, which will be matched on the new structure. It's currently got 2x4 rafter tails sticking out under the eave, which we propose to continue on in the pergola structure, and rusticated wood beams, which will match the character of the shed and the well structure, which is adjacent to it. Board and bat siding and a wood countertop above the storage. In the last page, we see that from the west side. Here we see pergola, which we really want to envision as an extension of the existing storage shed and help to clean up and really unify that courtyard and storage below. So hopefully we think it'll be an overall improvement to the property, and looking forward to your comments. Oh, I should also mention that I did forward this drawing package to Mr. Jacobus last month, and he took a look at it, and that he didn't have any substantial comments, but I did review it with him, and he thought that it was good that it was a long ways away from the historic landmark and a continuation of the existing structure.
Could I ask you to continue and talk more about your site developments that we're seeing here?
This site plan is just simply an image from a previous remodel 15 years ago. So none of the notes in black and white are part of the project. I've just simply used this plan as a sketch to indicate the property and show the areas of work.
So to clarify, you are not doing a new deck?
No.
Thank you.
The only work in the whole project is in this red square. Sorry for that confusion.
Okay. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, I will open it. Oh, just a moment. I will ask for public comment first. Pardon me?
Yeah, I have. If you're ready for public comment.
Yes, I am ready for public comment. Thank you. You introduce yourself for the record and.
Michelle? Excuse me?
Ellen DeForest?
Some questions. Question number one is, what, Jake isn't here, but what is actually landmarked in the city landmark? Oh, excuse me. What is actually landmarked in the city landmark? Is it just the adobe itself, or is it the property? Secondly, is there any portion of that adobe, that original adobe, that's visible to the public? I can see by these plans that it's been expanded over the centuries, and so it's a little hard to tell. I think that there is a facade on whatever to the west that is part of the original adobe, and it would be nice to, and I don't know what kind of public access there is, so people that are exploring adobes of Santa Barbara could see it would be nice. And then on the storage buildings, I think we need to. It should be considered because they're expanding. Is the and I think so. Would the board and BAT be the kind that would be approved by the Secretary of Interior standards? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. I think the one question we have is the whole site landmarked or just the part of the adobe?
Madam Chair, I don't know. That is Jake's area, and he's not here today. I asked Mr. Lamone. He does not know either. I mean, we can look it up and come back with information.
Well,
Maybe
I
Ms.
think
Days would know.
Yes. Would you introduce yourself?
Mary Louise Days. I was city staff when this was landmarked. And as I recall, the property was landmarked, but there is a file, of course, upstairs. And I'm sure that the next time it comes up, staff can give some background on it. It's also mentioned in the El Pueblo Viejo book. And it would have excluded the tea house building, but I think that it was the property. But and to answer part of Kellum's question, if you walk up to the enclosed adobe building, if you look at the window reveals, it's very obvious that it's adobe. That's usually the way that we discovered it. And it's occasionally the public can go in there. But does Mrs. Boucher remember when we designated that? I think at that time we were pretty much designating properties.
Way.
Yes. Yes. It's listed on the original 1960 list too.
It was when all the other adobes were landmarked.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes. There were a few buildings where we cut them, put a boundary line through it, like the Upham Hotel. But I believe this was the whole thing, and I'm sure that the next time it comes up, you'll get some more information on that.
Thank you. That is somewhat relevant, and I don't know if the applicant had done any research about this.
I did what I could do online and talking to people that were familiar with the property. I wasn't able to determine that question. Of course, it never occurred to me to ask that question. But I have seen some sketches, never a photograph of the adobe before any significant additions. And it is, the one sketch I've seen is shown with an adobe without any siding or any kind. But of course now the entire building's covered with the board and bat siding. David, can you add anything to that?
I don't know the answer to whether it's the whole property or just the area that is indicated. The adobe itself is now the conference room of our law offices. In terms of it being publicly available, our firm represents the public. We have people in those conference rooms every day who are involved in nonprofit organizations in town that we represent, and we have get-togethers relatively frequently in this courtyard, and it brings a fair cross-section of the community together. And part of the reason that we want this small addition, and it doesn't add any square footage really, it's just to create some sort of a service area so that we can accommodate the people who are there. I should point out that there is, as you can see from the pictures, there's a wall along Garden Street. And so from the exterior, you won't see any of this. It's once you come into the property where you're in a position to see what's been built there and maybe visit the adobe. And we always do point out with some pride that our conference room is an adobe that goes back 150 years. That's the only opportunity people have normally to see it.
Thank you. So I will now take questions from the commission members.
Okay. I've been sitting here patiently.
I know.
2 questions. One, do you know when the building was surrounded with the bigger building, when the adobe was?
I've reviewed the street file for this, which is my only real source of information, and none of the additions to this building have any records in the street file. So no,
They
I
surely
don't know
do
the
in
answer.
that first survey we did, which is probably upstairs. I was just interested in when the board and batten went up. That was my
Well,
question.
it was there when I first was on that property, which would be 1980.
I know, it's a lot longer
it was-
than
yeah,
that,
it's a long
because
time
It was a
back.
private home for a long time.
The remodel that we did in the late 90s just renewed what was already there. So
Sure. No, I was just interested if we could find out when the board and batten was first established. The other question I have, and it's sort of half a question and half a sort of a statement, I assume there's going to be no major ground disturbance here
No.
for this new thing. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Suding.
I have a quick
Yes,
question.
Mr. Sharp.
Mr. Landecker said you wouldn't see anything from the street, I believe, yet the north elevation does show this trellis above the wall by a couple feet.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could, on the west elevation, maybe draw in or dash in where that top of wall would be.
Oh.
And what we would actually see from the sidewalk and
Right.
the street.
Good question. Yeah, I think if you look at the north elevation, is going to give us a good indication that we'll see probably 18 inches to 2 feet of the peak of that trellis poking over the wall. And another good indicator is if we look at the photograph on the second page, you can see the ridge and the eave of the shed in the very bottom right corner, and so you might see a little bit of that trellis dashed, right at that point.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Suding.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. Between the photographs of the shed on page 3 and the drawing you have of the west elevation, it looks like the pitch is a little bit different. Is your intent to keep the pitch of the existing shed, or are you changing the pitch?
We're not proposing any alterations to the existing shed.
That's okay. Okay, so
it's just
you'll
a
need to
discrepancy in
you'll need to
the
resolve
sketch.
that pitch issue. And then secondly, excuse me, on page 2, have you considered at all moving the area of proposed work sort of out of the corner of that property juncture? If we go to the site plan here, say maybe shifting it this way just to sort of give a better composition to this interior here, so on and so forth.
We did look at some studies where we looked at several different options. One, making the corner of this poke out a little bit to make it be able to be addressed from two sides. We looked at converting this shed to the storage area and adding an addition so that service area was more centrally located in the middle of the courtyard area to address it. I think in the way that you're suggesting. And ultimately, when we looked at all the factors such as cost and keeping this area of work as far away as possible from the important historic portion of the property, we did settle on what we've decided there.
And then I guess the last question is your response to Commissioner Boucher's question about ground disturbance. I'm assuming you are going to have to put those on foundations or
yes.
of some sort. So that is ground disturbance. It's not major ground disturbance, but it is ground disturbance.
Thank you.
And just to point out, the purpose here is really relatively minor. We're a law firm. We're a nonprofit organization. We do a whole lot of other things. This is not central to our mission. This is something we wanted to do to make the property a little more attractive and a little more functional for when we have guests.
And we're here to help you do that.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you. And unless it's direct answer to the question, I would prefer if that was the only intercourse right now until we got to. Any other questions, Mr. Schallenberger?
Just curious, when were these photos taken?
Those were taken just before the Christmas break.
So there was some tree work done recently, it looks like. Is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of. David, can you answer that?
We have done tree work. When was the last time? I don't think not since these photos were taken. If they were taken near Christmas, we haven't done any the last couple of weeks.
No, but I just had some photos of this
that were made
A year ago, and it just was a lot more overgrown at that
Yeah,
point.
we have in the last year, we've cut some of the trees back, and it's something we do periodically just to maintain the property.
Great, thanks.
Mr. Adams?
Yes. Okay, where you have the new area of work and the cabinetry, it's pushed into the corner. Did you run this by city staff as far as structures and setbacks go? Any side setbacks? What was their response?
Yes, I did. The property is a C2 zoned property, so there's 0 setbacks required on any sides of the property. I looked at the plans with them. They didn't see any major issues with the project to note. In fact, they said that the project may not require a building permit as long as we don't do any electrical, but did, of course, notify us that we'd be needing to visit the historic annex.
Then the other question, did the discussion come up to upgrade that tree in the corner at all? It looks like it's kind of skinny and leaning. I don't know the tree personally, but...
No, that has not been part of the discussion. This is a nonprofit organization that's trying to complete the project primarily with donations, perhaps their own labor, very low minimal budget, and we're simply trying to preserve the tree to preserve the amount of landscaping that's there now and enhance it.
How big is that tree in terms of width, about your kneecap or waist height?
I can't remember exactly, but take a look.
It looks about 6 inches. And Commissioner Adams, if I may interject, do you know what type of tree that is from the photos?
No, I don't, but I'm hesitant to say it could be Australian.
Yeah.
In any case, I think we should get an identification on that tree, and then we would probably be better able to see what it's going to do. You know, I mean, if it's a sycamore, it's going to get huge.
Right.
If it's an oak or whatever, so just identify the tree. Okay. And we're moving into comments, and I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. I will now move into comments. Anybody wish to start? Mr. Adams?
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in here. I'm looking at the I'm looking at the site plan, and so can we turn to the site plan or the visual? No.
Oh.
Other one, the sort of illustrated plan. Bird's eye view. Okay, so I always like safe access around buildings, and this looks pretty tight. I wonder if you cut this back a little bit, whether you could, easily and safely enter into the space. It seems like this just pinches us off. So that would be my comment. Yeah.
Can I respond?
No.
Comments.
Oh.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Soothing.
Just 2 comments. Please identify the tree, and please resolve the pitch discrepancy on the drawings.
Any other comments? Mr. Peugeot?
I think this is a minimalist and very small project that I think is correct. It barely needs a building permit. I think it's completely away from the historic Adobe, just about hidden from the view of the public. I've been to this courtyard many times. It looks well placed, and I'm sure that I'm sure many people have had their say about this little, dare I say, beverage serving facility. And I think it's wonderful. I think it's very well done, and I would like to move it along and to to the consent calendar when these items have been resolved. So after the environmental assessment is complete. Thank you.
I echo those comments. Regardless of my pickiness of my comments, I think what Commissioner Peugeot said is very appropriate.
I agree also.
Is there anything else other than that?
Yes, I agree with those comments. I also would like you to just, when Jay comes back, to just answer the question of exactly what was designated. Because I think you're doing a good job by having the spatial relationship of this proposed building with it, and that's most of what we're concerned about. But I think it's just for the record, since we are doing the project for your own information as well, to get, and if you could just get a copy of that survey, and so we know about the building and a little history of the building, and put it in with your application, that would be great.
Great.
Thank you. So, oh, yes.
One more thing.
Yes.
I know the staff mentioned that these drawings are 1 inch shorter than the required 12 by 18. I would ask staff to make a minor exception. 11 by 17 is close enough to be able to store, fold like this, and put in your file. Seems like a lot to ask, for such a minute project. It's just a comment to staff. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I respond
Yes.
quickly? We only have those standards because we get complaints from board members when people submit drawings that are too small. So
You're not going to get any complaints from these commissioners?
Well, I just got one, so.
That they're too small?
No, that we should accept them as small. And then what happens is board members open up these little drawings and they're not large enough to see what's happening. So it's really hard to get a
No, but let me say
happy
something.
medium.
You can fit a scale drawing at 1/4 inch, you may even fit it at 1/2 inch in this piece of paper. Whereas if we're talking about something like the entrada, for instance, then it will be completely unacceptable. You have to kind of go with the
I
with the
understand.
character of the proposal.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
actually, I did accept these. That's why you're reviewing them. So the reason why it's on just the reason why it's being preliminarily concept review is because that's what the applicant requested.
Thank you.
He wanted to find out if it was going to fly before it actually came back. So
Thank you.
it wasn't my doing.
And let me ask you, staff, since it is not up for any sort of approval, we can't really move it along to consent.
No,
That's
but
absolutely
when
right.
he submits, I'll just
All
put it
right.
on consent.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Good.
So the comments are that, this project seems to be in conformance with our desires. However, we would like you to clarify the designation, whether it was the property or the building. We would like you to identify the tree. We would like you to look at the concept of safe access around the building there and rectify that pitch discrepancy.
Wait, I have no... that would not be part of my motion. I mean, I think
We don't
one
have a
person...
motion.
Some people have made some comments. I think it's not a universal concern that that corner is too close to the building or something. I mean, somebody has mentioned it, but it is not the consensus, I believe.
And I think the
have word
applicant
or
understands that in coming back to consent.
If I might, I just wanted to reply to Mr. Adams' concern about access back here, which is just to say, this is the legal aid building back here, and there's a raised, actually, area in here. There really is no, you can't walk through here.
Okay, then let's strike that regarding the safe access. And
I think the comments that you made, with the exception of that, probably are beneficial.
so if indefinite,
It's, you don't even, I mean, you've given, those were your comments, and then when he's ready to submit, he could submit tomorrow and get on
Okay.
consent in 2 weeks.
All right. Oh,
Thank you so much.
Is there
sorry, I think
public
there
comment?
seems to be public comment regarding our motion, or comments.
Mary Louise Days, since this property is, or we think it is, a city landmark, doesn't there have to be environmental review and the findings made for alterations to a landmark?
Correct.
'Cause this is really
Yeah,
quick.
that's why it was agendized as a very preliminary concept review. When if and when he turns around and submits a regular project for the fees, I will then run the MEA and do the environmental analysis on it. And that's why I was asking him questions about ground disturbance, because there are certain thresholds. Correct.
The applicant understands? Yes. All right. Well, all those, well, there is no motion. Never
no
mind.
motion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for...
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We'll hold on to one of these. You can have this.
Is Alex on the board or something? Is Alex on the board or something?
Your mic is still
The
on.
next item is 913 State Street.
Your mic is still
Denied.
Oops.
You're right.
Yeah. You-
Anybody else?
Yeah, we got it.
Happy New Year. Prospero Año Nuevo.
I'm going to read the comments so that the commissioners can refresh themselves. Our comments in December the 2nd were: the commission was generally in support of the project and gave positive comments. It would be preferred that the facade be less ornate. The preparation of a focused letter report would help determine the style of the building, the history of the facade's design, and the period of significance. Mr. Lenny, if you'll introduce yourself.
Henry Lenny Design Studio. Just to clarify, we're not changing the facade at all, with the exception of the modified storefront. What we're doing is trying to avoid make any changes to the facade, and I see the ornamentation as tantamount to an awning, basically. So I think even though it would be very interesting to do some sort of a focus study of what the building was, and so on, and I still want to do that personally. I probably wouldn't have the client pay for a professional to do that, just out of curiosity. But we like the building the way it is. There's absolutely no changes proposed other than things that are applied. And the only change, in my opinion, that would bring it more into keeping would be the actual steel storefront that we have. But based on the comments that you made the last time, I did simplify reduce the ornamentation on the sides. And basically what this is just a steel plate, and you'll see a detail in the corner that it's basically a cladding of steel. That will have some projections forward. There is, if you look at the photographs, there's quite a bulkhead there, and in order to keep it, in my opinion, more into proportion, I introduced the ornamentation that would be just simply pinned to the building. I think the other comment was that the middle window was slightly larger than the other two, and indeed it was, but that's just graphically the way it is, and so is the dormer above. On the previous one, I was missing the roof that is there. It appears to be like a shingle roof, and so that was introduced. So the only change that you see here is the reduction in ornamentation, and some details to kind of explain what we're doing, and maybe we should go through those a little bit. I went through the cladding of the columns so that the actual cladding is not just on the surface of the facade on State Street, but it will turn the corner. As you can, as you can see it in the plan, and that is shown here. This is a detail that is really a strut that is going to be placed, that would hold the whole thing together, so to speak. And then this is the type of detail that we would use both at the bottom and at the top as well. Still working on the signage, and that will probably go to the sign committee, but the thought on the signage was that it would be a milk-type glass with some traditional lettering on top of it. And as far as the actual base of it, because the sidewalk slopes, it's going to vary a little bit, but for the most part it's 18 inches. And you can see that I was really trying to give some reveal to the base of that steel storefront, just for interest, I suppose. So the actual base of the storefront will start at 18 inches and it will increase as the slope goes to the other end. And so this is basically what we're proposing.
Thank you. I'll ask for public comment. Mr. DeForest. Thank you.
Kellum DeForest. Again, Mr. Lenny is a fanciful architect. He loves to decorate things. I'm wondering, does this fit into this busyness or fussiness? Does this, which I see, does this, I would like the commission to weigh in on the fact, does it fit into the Andalusian guidelines of the Pueblo Viejo? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest. I'll open up to questions from the commissioner now.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr.
Question, and I'm sorry I wasn't here during the first presentation. Mr. Lenny, is your intent then to retain these pickets of the balustrade as is?
Everything.
Okay, so it's really just the wrought iron work on the first floor. Thank you.
Any other? Yes, Mr. Peugeot?
This detail 4, that solid part under the glass, is that part of is that the existing part? It looks like maybe
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that part there.
Oh, this, the base of it
Yeah,
you're
what is
talking
that?
about?
Oh,
that's part of the base of the storefront.
That's a new storefront.
That's the new storefront.
So it'll be like a hollow piece, I would imagine.
It would
Otherwise,
have
this-
to
yeah,
be.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it would have to be. That's the only part that is hollow.
Right, right. But all the other stuff is
It's solid, hammered.
stuff. Okay, very
Mhm.
good. Thanks.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Yes, Mr. Drury.
In the page 1 of one photograph, the windows will still be open. There'll be glass. So we're looking basically
Yeah.
at everything from the first floor up.
It's existing.
Thank you. Further questions? Mr. Schellenberger.
I'm just curious about detail 3, where I see the spear points come down almost to the bottom of these scrolls, but it looks a little different in the elevation, and I'm just wondering, is this spear point that spear point?
This one, yeah.
So will it
Probably
come down
can tell.
further or stay up? I'm just curious.
You know, that's a good point. I drew it and I didn't think about that, but I actually like
Yeah, I do
it
too.
retained. You're right. That's a good observation.
Any other questions from commissioners? Yes, Ms. Murray.
If you put this on, is it going to be, you said it was not going to be fully attached or just slightly attached? Because the real question is, if you were to put it on and remove it, do you destroy the historic resource? That's
And that's something that I thought about. And the best example I can give you is you see this. These are supposed to be the attachment points. They would probably be attached only in 2 places, which I believe is enough. One at the bottom and one at the top. And there's no, and whether it's with 1 attachment or 2 at each end, I don't think this is going to go anywhere if we do the minimal amount. We want to make sure that it doesn't buckle out.
yeah, sure.
The same occurs here, and I'm not sure how that's going to occur, but I suspect that probably the fabricator will set this up in 2 or 3 places and attach it, which is because this is proud of the facade by a few inches. To your point, I think we're probably going to do just enough to make sure that it doesn't fall, but no more than that. The weight is actually pretty negligible on this, even though it's all 3/4 of an inch, but in terms of the attachment. So to answer the question, the idea is not to fill this whole thing with holes. Keep in mind also that this is actually pour-in-place concrete. It's
That's
not
what I was-
framed.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Suding.
Comment.
Well, let me just ask if
Oh,
there
I
are
thought
any
we-
more questions.
Oh, I thought-
Yes, Mr. Drury.
It's again from a photograph. These small windows above the windows at front State Street, will they remain?
Oh, you're talking about that whole entire facade would be removed. That was placed there sometime, from what I can tell, around the 70s.
Can we see the photo?
Louise?
I don't think
How
so.
about on camera?
Yeah, very good.
Can camera zoom in, please?
Got it.
In other words, from the photographs that I found, and there were very few, the storefront changed a number of times, including an enormous awning.
Oh,
That used to cover most of the facade of the building anyway. I liked it. It was quirky, but...
Are there any more questions? Seeing none, let's go to comments then.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Studi.
You know, I do think this is Andalusian, or Andalusian, if you want to say it that way. And I think it is somewhat of an improvement to the building because it is rather plain. That being said, I don't know that the bottom floor is congruous with the upper two floors, particularly the pickets of the balustrade. It just doesn't seem to jive. Perhaps, and I'm not going to design it, but perhaps if those top balustrades were changed out, maybe it would.
Thank you. Madam Bashir, would you like to continue with your comments?
I hadn't made a comment. Oh, you mean that?
Yes, would you like to? Would you like?
Sorry. I'm sorry. Well, I would really hate to start doing something to the upper portion in order to make the lower portion fit. And I still think that although you've removed the things from the side, Henry, it's just a little much for me. It just doesn't. I think the comment that it doesn't hang together with the rest of the building is true, and so I'm torn.
Thank you.
Chair.
Yes, Mr. Schellenberger.
I think I need to look at this and appreciate it from an architect responding to a client's standpoint. I look at this more like, almost like signage, where this business, Angel, or Angle, I don't know how they pronounce it, is trying to establish an identity for their store. And I think the decorative ironwork here, I look at it more, like I said, as a signage element to the building. And I actually applaud and appreciate Henry's efforts in creating an easily removable method of doing that and just attaching in certain points that are probably some drilled and doweled or some type of connection points. So I don't see it as such a major change to the architecture of the building, and I just see an architect here responding to the needs of a client while still trying to preserve the integrity of the building. So I have positive comments for the design and also for the response from the previous review. I think the applicant has made significant simplifications here.
Thank you. Any further comments from him?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Drury.
It does seem to me that the existing storefront with those small windows is more congruous with the building as it exists than a flush to the street entryway. I think from the street, I was down there last week, it does seem to sort of hang together. Not sort of, it hangs together because I think that those windows are rather quirky and it's a quirky building. And I don't know if there's a way to just repeat those features without or with the client's approval, but it seems to me that architecturally it works for me anyway.
Thank you. Ms. Murray.
I hear what Commissioner Schellenberger is saying, but on the other hand, this is a historic building. It's recognized. And the problem is, because it's like that, it comes under Secretary of Interior standards every time you try to do something to it. And there's a standard that says, number 3, which says it's really bad form to do something to a structure by borrowing other elements from other styles or other. In other words, if you do something to a building like this, you're supposed to stay with the integrity of the original design or something that is enhancing of it. And that's my trouble with, I realize that the owner is trying to have a shop and create an identity. But on the other hand, I see that identity is this building. It's the historical integrity of this building that is no other. There's no other like it on State Street. And so from the perspective of the preservation and the standards, that's what I would go for. And I agree with Drury, even though these are sort of funky and later additions, they were trying. You could see that they were trying to have a little mimic of something of the other elements at the top. And so that's my conflict. You know, I would like to see a resolution that is easy and doable for the property owner and to get his business going. But at the same time, I cannot violate the standards by adding other things just to dress up something. You know, that's the conflict.
Thank you.
Also, these these recessed deep fronts they're sort of important character of the building, and I think the steel sort of sense of column would give something anyway. Those are just my reservations.
Thank you. Further comments from?
Let's think about different opinions. So I'm not sure if you want to take straw votes or what. I like the idea of eliminating the deep recess. I'm not sure what the significance is of that. I think it doesn't fit on the street. I don't know how significant the building is. It definitely, having the asphalt shingles, it's a problem. I mean, the third floor, it could be in some tract house somewhere in the suburbs. It's absolutely not EPV, the third floor. The second floor is of dubious value to me. And the first floor has been completely remodeled. I understand that sometimes the familiar, because you see something every day, somehow it becomes important and cherished.
Absolutely.
But I kind of doubt the architectural value of this piece of this building. So
I really disagree with you. This is a recognized
landmark. And believe me, this is one of the oldest buildings we have in the city. And you probably missed the last review, but Mary Louise Days came and showed its merits, and that's why we had asked for a focus letter report, just so that we know. But it's a rare building, and buildings may not look beautiful, but they are historical, and we can't just throw anything on them and say it's okay.
I'm going to finish with our comments first.
I thought I was making my comments.
Yes.
Okay.
You are still going. Keep going with your comments.
Well, I mean, if this building has, I was here in the last review, and I did see the photographs. Right. So, if it does have that level of significance, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it demonstrate on some kind of a report. If this is structure of merit.
We requested a focus letter report, and Mr. Lenny made his case for not bringing it.
But this is not a designated building, as far as I'm concerned, right?
May I make a comment, please?
Well, can we show? Does it respond to?
At the time of the first survey that we did in the downtown, when David Gebhardt and a group of us worked very hard on it, this is one of the buildings selected as significant. It's a very unusual building. It's a very recognizable thing on State Street. This building goes way back, and therefore it may not have been given landmark status or structure of merit. We'll never get around to all the buildings that should be given status, but this one has been recognized going way back.
Mr. Bashir, are you done with your comments? Or?
Yeah, I'm not sure which way to proceed then. I don't know if this building is significant or not. I mean, yes. I can see how it's recognizable. Maybe that makes it significant. Maybe that's what it is.
But the building next door is recognizable too. So
I'm going to ask.
Maybe the awning was recognizable.
Yes. If Mr. Sharp has any comments.
I think we need a little more information on the significance of this prior to approving or disapproving something that will certainly change the character of the building as one sees it walking and driving by it.
Thank you. And I want to add a minor comment, which is there have been statements regarding this is like signage or this is like an awning, but in my point of view, those small items are just as important to our approval of a building and adding to what it is and how it enhances it. So I see no diminution of the critical review we should be giving to this.
Can I just say one last thing? The trees block the building for all intents and purposes. We should remove the trees then, if this building is not significant, number one. Number two, we could just put an awning and call it a day. The problem is, as Greg indicated, it's difficult enough to get tenants, and they want some identity. The identity is, for all intents and purposes, temporary. We don't know if this business is going to be here for the next 50 years. I doubt it. Or 1 year from now. And that's why I chose to, rather than putting an awning on the shady side of the street, I chose to put something interesting from a pedestrian point of view. I was standing in front of on top of the parking structure. No one looks at this building. If you want to continue it and walk through it, what happens to the pedestrian experience? The building adjacent to this, that should be a landmark. It's a Plunkett building. And so, as far as the style is concerned, I can tell you, you'll find no other style. You'll find some similar buildings on Wilshire Boulevard. It is unique, however, and it should not be touched.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I agree with Commissioner Sharp. I think we need more information, Mr. Linney. It's a wonderful project. It's a wonderful way to give a building an identity, but we don't know if we're doing the right thing. And so that's why we need more information.
I think I'd like a motion for a continuation with the request, to repeat the request for a focus letter report.
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Comments, please.
I believe we should be taking a recess, as the next item is not due until 3 o'clock. So why don't we take a 10-minute recess? All right. Okay. 10-minute recess.
And I think you're absolutely right. It is an identifiable building.
honey, our answer is always yes, 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 yes. Do we need you? Oh my, do we, honey? Our answer is always yes, 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 yes. We're so glad we found you. You're a sender. Won't you stick around? We intend to hound you until you pick us, sweetie, from the band. 'Cause we all want you. Oh my, do we, honey? Our answer is always yes, 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 yes.
The one I love is a secret, that's all that I can say. So I'll just sing about him while you continue to play. Do I want you? Oh my, do I, honey? Indeed I do. Do I need you? Oh my, do I, honey? Indeed I do. I'm glad that I'm the one who found you. That's why I'm always hanging all around you. Now do I love you? Oh my, do I, honey? Indeed I
sign of the times, huh?
I'm going to call the commission back to order.
Happy New Year, Brian.
Happy New Year to you guys.
Yes. Call the commission back to order for item number 3, 633 East Cabrillo Boulevard. Will you introduce yourself for the record?
or not here.
No.
I was given 3 new sets. So I was feeling they all
But I have no idea what he. We'll fill
You
out
don't know what's going on?
just in case. No, it's. I mean, he gave me 3 sets, so I'm guessing that he must have made some changes, and I doubt if they are very significant. But let's just be safe.
And I will contact him.
Who is this? You're a fellow board member.
Oh, that him.
Yeah. So I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that since he sent me with 3 sets, being the good, diligent one that I am, that we should be looking at this.
Well, let's do.
Although I don't think anything's changed since the last time.
Will you introduce yourself for the record?
Brian Cornell.
Thank you.
So this first sheet pretty much shows what we've got. Yeah, this of course was the violation where this little portable building was sitting over here in the parking lot, and the city said, no, you need to get a permit for that. So we're moving it over to here, and actually in the process, I think the best thing about this project is they're going to get rid of this large lawn area here and landscape it with more drought-tolerant landscaping. So I'm sorry that plan just switched its direction on you, but that's really the bulk of the change. So this is an existing accessible pathway down to the tennis courts, which are partially depressed currently. So we're adding this patio, moving that building, and then basically replastering it per our elevations. I know.
I have a question now. Didn't we see this?
Yes, you saw it, but we had to get a coastal development permit, yeah, and also conformance with the development plan, substantial conformance.
Right, that substantial conformance determination was granted.
So
Done
I'm
with
here
your
for preliminary
presentation?
and final.
Okay. I see no one in the public, so I won't ask for public comment. I'll ask for questions from the commission if there are any. If not, I'll ask for comments or a motion.
We had favorable comments on this before. I would say I'll make a motion for preliminary and final.
If you can.
I will make a motion for preliminary and final.
Great.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
Drury, I think. Did you second? Yes. Drury. Motion carries.
Thank you. God,
Must have
how
been
great
the
is
3 new
this?
sets.
Huh?